I'm Rabbi Ariel Yitzchak. From a young age, I was immersed in the faith of my ancestors, learning Torah and feeling a deep connection to the stories of our people. I knew my path was set to serve God, teach Torah, and guide my community in their journey of faith. For decades, I led prayers, officiated life cycle events, and comforted my congregation in times of sorrow. My faith wasn't just something I practiced, it was who I was. But life, as we know, tests even the strongest foundations. It began with fatigue, then pain, until a doctor's diagnosis, stage 4 colon cancer, shattered the world I thought I knew. I had comforted so many in similar situations, but now the words of faith I had once shared seemed distant. Yet I chose to face this trial the same way I had faced every other challenge, with unwavering trust in Hashem. As chemotherapy drained me, I prayed and recited psalms, even as doubt occasionally crept in. I found strength in the stories of Job and the prophets, reminding myself that this was my test. As the illness progressed, I grew weaker. Esther's panicked voice cut through the haze. "Ariel, stay with me!" I wanted to reassure her, but no words came. My vision blurred, and the room around me faded. The last thing I saw was Esther's tearful face, then nothing. When I opened my eyes, I found myself above my body, watching as Esther desperately shook me. My grown children rushed in, frantic, calling for an ambulance. I saw my own lifeless form lying on the floor, and though I should have been afraid, I felt an eerie calm, as if freed from pain and worry. And I tried to speak, to reach out to Esther, but my amazement, my hand passed through her. I realized I was no longer part of the world I once knew. The paramedics arrived, their voices distant as they worked on me, but I was powerless to comfort them. I was caught between two realms, a silent observer. Then, something suddenly shifted. The room brightened, not from the lights, but from a soft, distant glow. It started faintly, like a candle flickering, but it quickly grew, pulsing with warmth and life. I felt an undeniable pull toward it, a peace I hadn't known in months. It was as if the light was calling me, inviting me closer. As I moved toward it, the chaos below the paramedics, Esther's sobs, the beeping of machines faded into a distant hum. The light enveloped me in warmth, overwhelming and comforting all at once. I hesitated, unsure if this was death or the presence of God, but I couldn't resist. Every part of me was drawn to it. Just as I surrendered, I heard familiar voices, and my father's, reciting a prayer I hadn't heard in years. The sound stirred a deep longing in me, a sense of home and safety. I moved closer. The pull was growing stronger, and with it came an anticipation, as if I were on the edge of something profound. The light expanded, and just as I felt myself crossing into its embrace, everything around me started to change. In the light, a warmth unlike any I'd ever felt ever before wrapped around me, physical and spiritual. It wasn't just comfort. It was freedom from pain, from worry, from the weight of the world. It was as though I was being welcomed home. Then the light began to change again. Images appeared not in front of me, but within it, like it held the story of my life. I saw myself as a boy, running through the fields near my childhood home, my mother's laughter echoing in the background. The scenes came faster: my ordination as a rabbi, my first sermon, the gratitude of families I had helped through grief. Each moment felt alive, a reaffirmation of the life I had dedicated to God. Then the warmth of the light vanished, replaced by an icy chill that gripped the air. The once bright glow dimmed, and the comforting hum got silent. A knot twisted in my stomach, unease rising, but I couldn't understand why. The images in the light lost their color, fading to lifeless shadows. I felt that something was wrong, horribly wrong. The silence shattered with a faint whisper that grew into a chorus of anguished cries. Figures began to emerge from the darkness. Men, women, children, all twisting in pain. Their faces contorted in terror, their hands clawing at the air, begging for mercy. Their screams cut through me like a blade. I couldn't look away. I was paralyzed. The agony around me was so real that I felt it in my own bones. This wasn't just a vision, it was their pain, their despair flooding me. It was suffocating. more real than anything in life, and I couldn't escape. I had spent my life teaching about God's mercy and justice, but here, in this place, those teachings felt distant and inadequate. How could this suffering exist in the presence of a just and loving God? I tried to pray, to recite the words that had always brought me comfort, but they wouldn't come. My mind was a whirlwind of questions and doubt. Who were these people? Why were they here? Was this some form of judgment? The cries grew louder, their anguish pressing down on me. I felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness. I had spent my life guiding others, but here, in this place, I had no answers. Then, cutting through the chaos, I heard a voice. It was deep, resonant, and unlike anything I had ever heard before. It wasn't angry, but it carried a weight, a power that silenced everything around it.
Ariel,
The voice called, calm but powerful. And as it did, the cries of suffering faded into silence. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned toward the source, the figures of torment dissolving into the shadows, leaving me alone in an overwhelming emptiness. The air was thick with a kind of anticipation, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I didn't know who or what was speaking to me, but deep within my soul, I knew this moment would change everything. I would never be the same.
Ariel,
The voice called again, this time with a weight that pulled at my very core.
who is God?
The question struck like lightning. Who is God? I repeated the words, the answer hanging in the air just out of reach. I had spent my entire life teaching others about God, praying, studying His Word, yet now I couldn't answer. The words that had once flowed so easily felt hollow, fragile.
Have you truly known me?
The voice asked, its calm insistence reverberating through the void. I wanted to protest. Of course, I knew God. I had devoted my life to Him through every prayer, every lesson. But suddenly, all my certainty crumbled. The question wasn't about rituals or laws. It was about something deeper, something more personal. And in that moment, I didn't know. I truly didn't know. As the darkness around me seemed to shift, the void began to fill with visions that defied time and understanding. In the vision, I saw Abraham on Mount Moriah, his trembling hand raised to sacrifice Isaac. I saw Moses, face alight with divine fire, receiving the tablets of the covenant. These were the stories I had lived with, preached about, believed in. But then the visions changed. I saw a man, his face radiant, walking along a dusty road. A sense of peace and purpose surrounded him. He spoke to the crowd with a power that stirred something deep within me, even though I couldn't hear the words. Who was he? He was not part of the stories I knew, but he felt familiar. The visions shifted again, showing this man healing the sick, restoring sight to the blind, lifting the crippled. These were no ordinary miracles. They were personal, intimate. I saw him break bread, offering it to his followers.
This is my body given for you,
he said. His words echoed in my mind. Everything began to blur together. Were the Torah and the New Testament all woven together and inseparable? Then the man stood before a great crowd, his voice ringing out, clear and unwavering.
I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
The words hit me like a tidal wave, their meaning undeniable. This was Jesus, the man I had known only through distant accounts, outside theological boundaries. Now he was before me, more real than I could ever imagine.
Ariel,
The voice spoke again, closer now, as if it was inside me.
you have spent your life seeking me, but have you truly found me?
Tears streamed down my face. I have tried, I whispered, my voice breaking. I thought I understood, but now, I don't know. The visions faded, and in their place, a blinding light filled the space. From that light emerged the figure of Jesus, his presence so overwhelming in power and in compassion. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw a love so profound it shattered me. His gaze was filled with understanding, no condemnation, just an invitation.
You have known the law and the prophets,
He said, his voice gentle yet firm.
but the fullness of truth is before you now. I came not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. You have sought God in the commandments, and they are good, but the path to the Father is only through me.
I collapsed to my knees, the weight of his words suffocating me. They weren't condemnation, they were an invitation that felt like a doorway opening to something beyond comprehension. But why me? I asked, voice trembling. Why now? Jesus stepped closer, his gaze never wavering.
Because you have the courage to ask, to seek beyond what you know. That is the first step toward truth.
He paused, his expression softening.
What you have taught and believed has not been in vain. Your devotion has brought you here. But there is more to know. The question is, will you have the courage to follow where I lead?
The light around him pulsed as if waiting for my response. My heart and mind clashed in turmoil, struggling to grasp what I had seen, what I had heard. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could, he spoke again.
Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened.
The light intensified, and in an instant, the vision began to fade. I was left with his words, both clear and infinitely vast, echoing in my mind. Whatever came next, I knew my life would never be the same. The return to my body was sudden. One moment I was in the light, surrounded by truth and love. The next, I was gasping for air, the sterile brightness of fluorescent lights blinding me. But in that moment, I knew something profound had changed. Something inside me was different. Forever. I gasped for air. He's back, someone said. Esther's tear-streaked face appeared above me, her hands gripping mine with relief. I had survived, but it didn't feel like survival. I had been somewhere else, seen something beyond this world, and its weight was suffocating. In the days that followed, the hospital felt like a prison. The doctors couldn't explain my miraculous recovery, but for me, the physical healing didn't matter. What I had experienced, the voice, the vision, the presence of Jesus refused to leave me. It haunted me, felt more real than anything I had ever known, and left me with nothing but questions. I tried to return to my prayers, but they felt empty, hollow. The teachings I had built my life on suddenly seemed incomplete, missing something vital. I wanted to dismiss it all, convince myself it was just the delirium of a dying mind. But the words Jesus spoke to me, "Seek, and you will find," kept haunting me, pulling at the edges of my faith. I told no one, not even Esther. How could I explain something that might tear apart everything I had believed? So I wrestled alone, poring over the Torah, searching for answers I couldn't find. The questions I had weren't answered by the texts I had always relied on. One day, while walking to clear my head, I passed a small church. Hesitant, I felt the same pull from my vision. I stepped inside. An older man, a pastor, welcomed me with warmth. Without thinking, I poured out everything: my illness, the vision, the voice, my encounter with Jesus. He listened in silence, understanding in his eyes. When I finished, he handed me a Bible. "You've been given a gift," he said gently. "It's not an easy path, but truth is real. This may help." I hesitated. Opening that Bible felt like crossing a line. But one sleepless night, I picked it up. The words felt strangely familiar, carrying the same compassion and authority I had felt in my vision. As I read about Jesus' life, the puzzle began to fall into place. His words spoke to my heart, answering questions I didn't even know I was asking. Over time, my heart changed. The doubts that had weighed me down began to lift, replaced by a peace I'd never known. The teachings of Jesus didn't conflict with my faith, they completed it. Deciding to follow him was the hardest thing I've ever done. When I told my family, their reactions were a mix of confusion and heartbreak. Esther couldn't understand how I could leave the faith we'd shared. Our children, too, asked the same questions I once had. It hurt, but I knew I couldn't turn back. I prayed for their understanding, trusting that God would work in their hearts as he had in mine. Today, my life is radically different. The lessons of the Torah still guide me, but they are now illuminated by the teachings of Jesus. I share my story not to persuade, but to testify to the transformation that happens when we seek truth with open hearts. We're all on a journey, and prayer offers incredible strength throughout. Thank you for watching. For more powerful near-death stories, explore the videos on the screen. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. If you feel moved to share or comment on your own experience, please do so below. We'd love to pray for you and walk alongside you. God bless.